everybody, and welcome back to an Invisible and Invisible Illness Awareness Project. Now we are finally getting back into COVID, Chronic Illness Edition, / why disabled people are salty as fuck. In part 1, we basically focused entirely on how difficult this time period has been for people who are already stuck at home and still unable to do anything productive, but at the same time the hope that it gave a lot of them that maybe this could improve things for the future. Now we're moving on into part 2, and the first topic we're going to touch on is accessibility. Imani Barberin tweets, "So you've probably seen mine and other disabled people's pissed off tweets about the response to the coronavirus. You're probably wondering why we're disabled and salty as fuck. Here's a thread as to why. Join me if you please." Here's just an excerpt out of this entire thread. "I knew of many disabled people who were pushed out of jobs simply for asking their employers for accommodations that are required by law. So imagine my surprise, all disabled people's surprise, when, because of the coronavirus, all of the accommodations we've been denied because we're disabled have suddenly become available. Quelle fucking surprise. A lot of the things disabled people have long demanded have instantly manifested now that non-disabled people need them too. Disabled people asked for telecommuting and you called us lazy." Kayla Cook tweets, "I'm so confused about my feelings regarding medical accessibility changes. Is this better or worse? On one end, some specialists and testing is stalled, but on the other, now I can do telehealth for some appointments and it would actually be beneficial to continue. I feel irritated when I reflect on asking if I could do phone consults from January to February, but it was impossible then. But why make healthcare easier for people who need it constantly? That would be silly. Please don't go making the system more efficient and permanently accessible." Jen Brea tweets, "This was so needed all those years I was too sick to see a doctor. Hopefully this collective COVID-19 experience will pave the way for regulations and reimbursements that make telemedicine easier and widely available to everyone who needs it." Ketra Wooding replies, "It's the same in Australia. Telehealth is now suddenly, instantly doable. It's very bittersweet because it shows how little our health ministers, etc., value the lives of people house or bedbound with disabilities. Yet Aussie patients must have had a real-life meeting with their GP, which means my friends who haven't been able to leave their home, or in some cases bedroom, for years, are still unable to get basic medical care, let alone build a long-term relationship or rapport with a doctor. And mobile dentists are not covered for bedbound patients on disability, leading to obvious problems." Jameson Hill tweets, "I've missed out on so many things because people refused to do them virtually. Media interviews, writing gigs, doctor's visits. Now that everything is being done virtually, I hope those who refuse to do things this way will extend the same opportunities when the pandemic is over. I hope they don't just do it now because it serves them. And I hope they realize they could have been doing it this way all along." Heidi Hayway replies, "I've been saying for a long time that making things available virtually is an accommodation and accessibility issue. I'd like to see the chronic illness community start setting some legal precedent, saying we have a right to access to our community this way." Christina Maria retweets, "I was forced to miss many much-needed appointments when I was bedbound with ME/CFS because I couldn't physically get to them. When I asked to do it remotely, I was met with aggression and ridiculed, yet now it's suddenly safe and acceptable. I just hope this kind of inclusion carries on. I understand if examination/tests are involved, but consultations are just talking. It was yet another way I was punished for having this condition, an attitude of, well, if you can't get here, you can't really need it. When actually it's, I really need it because I can't get there." Of course, these are just very few of countless examples that can be found, and these tweets are also several months old now. What I'm starting to see more recently is that Places that had enabled telehealth are now stopping and saying that patients do have to come in person again. They are refusing to offer telehealth accommodations because they say that it risks possibly providing a slightly lower standard of care. And they don't really seem to be too concerned with their patients not having any care at all if they're unable to come in person. The next section we have is how this has affected deaf people. Ruthie tweets, "In deaf culture, it's very rude to cover the mouth. Some of us need it for lip reading, while some signers use the mouth as grammar. So this new position of wearing masks makes things very difficult for us, especially since a lot of hearings cannot sign, which would help." Lilo, the autistic queer, replies, "Honestly, obviously this is much worse for y'all, but I'm not even deaf and I find it difficult to understand people if I cannot see their mouths. This is a difficult time for sure. I've been reading about it affecting deaf-blind communities, especially because of tactile reliance." Chrissy tweets, "Transcript please, masks are so unfair." Again, these are just a couple examples that I was able to find when I was specifically researching for this video, but I can also remember seeing other tweets where people were complaining about just how unnecessary it is when you have people inside alone wearing a mask while they're filming a video. It just doesn't make sense. They're like, take off the mask so that we can at the very least lip read, because we know you're not going to bother to transcribe your video. Of course, captions would be great, but also taking off the mask when it clearly is not necessary would help, or wearing one of those masks with a clear window so that your mouth is visible. The next section is related to discrimination when it comes to getting healthcare. So someone tweeted, "Our ICU has extubated a COVID-19 patient for the first time, and it was someone I wasn't expecting to make it when I first admitted her. I've never been happier to be wrong." Kemra Gonzalez retweets, "This is exactly why triage protocols should not discriminate on the basis of disability, age, body weight, or any other despicable reason. Everyone deserves to be treated as an individual without bias." Jen Brea tweets, "This is so unbelievably sad and all so preventable and unnecessary. I gotta admit I'm scared. I'm nowhere near 60, but who knows what a doctor would think my life is worth. It's enough to make me want to burn all my medical records." Monique Duge tweets, "Tomorrow, Crip Camp drops on Netflix. Please help us make it go viral, especially these days when our disabled lives seem routinely devalued and we're refused life support measures with COVID. We need ableds to acknowledge our humanity and worth as human beings." Susan Mazrui tweets, "The world wants us dead," a quote from the 504 protests. "We face the same issues with COVID-19. Laws have changed, but why do some still assume a disability means a lower quality of life and treatment should be withheld, or old people should die for the economy?" Elaine Godfrey tweets an article from The Atlantic, "Americans with disabilities are terrified. They fear they could be denied life-saving treatment if they end up in the hospital with COVID-19. Elaine adds, "When the time to triage comes, medical professionals should not consider a patient's disability status, but some state protocols might direct them to do so." Jess P. Campbell replies, "They already are in the UK. Disability, underlying conditions, and age are being used to decide who gets treatment because our disgusting government has left our healthcare system so underfunded and under-resourced." Dr. Francis Ryan tweets a quote. Dr. Francis Ryan tweets a quote from an article in The Guardian. "It is worth considering why the default position is to deny life-saving treatment to some disabled people rather than to ask why a wealthy nation that had months to prepare doesn't have enough resources in the first place." Jen Brea retweets another quote, "NICE told doctors they should assess patients with conditions such as learning disabilities and autism as scoring higher for frailty, thereby meeting criteria to be refused treatment based on the fact they need support with personal care in their day-to-day life." She then goes on to quote a perspective article in the Washington Post, "My disability doesn't shorten my life expectancy. Most of my symptoms are invisible, and if I had to go to the hospital, we would want to keep it that way for as long as possible." MDs and able-bodied people. We who are disabled value our lives much differently than you value them, and we suspect that if you were to become disabled, you would value and enjoy your disabled life much more than you can imagine. Almost any rationing plan, if it had relied on my Karnofsky score 2012 to 2018, would deprioritize me for life-saving treatment. Yet these have been the most creative, productive, socially important years of my life. My chart would not tell you that. Your pity would mislead you. I'm a little sad we are finally going to get widespread use of telemedicine because doctors have discovered they love it, not because disabled people have been saying for years that we need it. The world gets better for everyone when we accommodate what disabled people need to participate, live well, or survive. Elevators, sidewalk ramps, telemedicine, telecommuting, universal access to healthcare. We like nice things. What might have changed of doctors' perception of me and my illness if they could have seen me when I was too sick to leave home? Context matters. So again, this is starting to get kind of long, and I have so much left to cover, so it looks like we're going to break this off now and continue with a part 3 in the future. So stick around, and I will see you guys next week.